You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, How to Train Your Dragon Part 2 is coming out to theaters this Friday, and you know what that means?
It means pitch ups are going to get a lot of crank calls.
Sure, why not? And it also means another episode of Don't F With the Original.
Nicholas, I'm the vegan correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I'm Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. For those of you who don't know, Don't F With the Original is when there's a sequel that comes out, or a remake, or a reboot. We look at the movie that started the franchise, review it, and use that review to gauge our expectations for this new movie.
All right.
In this case, of course, it is How to Train Your Dragon Part Uno, otherwise known as How to Train Your Dragon.
Yes.
Did you like it?
Yes, very much. I was kind of a little, put off at the beginning because, the main character was a little annoying to me. But, it kind of left after 15 minutes. And it's like, okay, no, he's a likable kid. And I really enjoyed the movie that way.
Okay, I actually really, really like that movie. I think that's one of the stronger animated features we've had in recent years, not from the major Pixar studio type thing,
Okay.
It doesn't hold up to something like Up, which is just a masterpiece, but it certainly holds up to any of the more recent Pixar sequels and DreamWorks movies. This holds up really well.
I would say that, yeah.
Alrighty then. Nick, why don't you get us started? Tell us what How to Train Your Dragon is actually about.
Well, it's about Hiccup, who's a Viking kid who's been growing up. He wants to, kill dragons to prove himself, and he manages to capture one. And he befriends him, and he trains him to fly because he got injured, and they become friends, and they finally realize that, killing dragons is not the way to do it. There's a reason why the dragons act a certain way, and basically...
That's a story.
It's a story, yeah.
So the whole idea is that this is a Viking village that has a dragon problem. There's a funny narration at the beginning of the movie where it's like, I come from the town of Burk, where everything sucks, and we have a pest problem.
Yeah.
Which is like the worst in the world, dragons. And there's this really cool relationship as well with the father, played by Gerard Butler. This is Sparta, Gerard Butler, playing an over-the-top Viking, so essentially more or less the same role.
Pretty much. Less chest, but, still the same role.
Actually, I find that the animation, they made him all chest, but...
Yeah, good point.
And there's this kind of really cool relationship in there where his father he's a smart man. Like, he's actually a really smart man, but he's single-minded, and he will not listen to his son because his son is he's different-minded, is what it is. And there's this sort of constant aura of disappointment in the way he treats his son.
Yes.
And this movie is as much about that as well, how our hero Hiccup deals with that and how that relationship changes for the best. I liked this movie a lot. I find, let's talk about the animation first and then we'll get into the story. It's really good. The characters are rounded and they're very much like Franco-Belgian comic book characters more than American type animation characters.
I could see that, yeah.
But their movements and their body language is really on point. There's a lot of scenes where I laughed out loud or got a little bit more emotional, and there wasn't a single line in it. It was just the way they move.
Yeah, even the dragon, which doesn't talk, he just basically growls, and just by his animation, you can see what's happening. You can actually see what he's feeling and how he's trying to communicate with Hiccup. And yeah, it's great animation. Any kind of more, lesser where you can't convey that, the movie would not have been as good.
Definitely. Yeah. And the aerial sequences as well, when he's flying, I'm reminded of that feeling that I had when I watched Spider-Man or Spider-Man review, where it's like, oh, this is cool. Like, I feel like I'm in the air with Hiccup on that dragon, whose name's Toothless. And, like, I feel that thing, and it must have been pretty cool in 3D. Like, because I know this movie was released in 3D in theaters. I actually watched it on video, so I don't actually know what it was like. But I can't imagine it being anything other than awesome for a kid to sit there and watch that screen in 3D with those flying sequences.
Yeah, especially computer-generated stuff. You can make it very well. and it's not just added at the last minute of let's make this pop out. You can actually give it depth a lot easier. So yeah, the 3D must have been pretty good.
No, it's probably one where it must have been a plus, definitely, not just like here's an excuse for you to spend $3 more than you would have normally.
Yeah, exactly.
For the Dark World! But but you mentioned that you didn't like the character at first, like our hero Hiccup at first. I want to know more about that.
Well, the thing is, he's a kid, obviously, and he's trying, I need to go kill those dragons and, prove myself and just, give it a break. You're a kid. They told you, your father told you to stay home to be safe, I just don't like kids that, go out and, I'm going to do what I think is right and try and prove myself. That's kind of like a ish on me. It's like, no, just, you're still a kid. It's for your protection, it's for your own good. Stay home, do what your parents say. And
yes, but it's not the standard, like, I'm a parent, I'm keeping you safe, and you have the plucky kid going, like, I can protect people too. Like, that's not the relationship this is. He's on the verge of adulthood. He should be as capable as as any other teenager of that age. He's verging on young manhood. And the thing is that his father puts him aside not because he's a kid, but because he sees no value in him as a warrior. And he makes that felt in every sentence he says. The way his father talks to him is always incredibly demeaning.
Yes, but, he's on the verge of adulthood. That was a little hard for me to see from, the animation. It's hard for me to gauge the age of a character that's computer generated. You can see it later on, that, okay, he's doing this and he's doing that. So yeah, he's probably just older than, a 10-year-old kid. I can see. But
so what
it was like, yeah.
So what you're saying is not so much that the character annoyed you at the beginning of the movie, so much as the way the movie was shown, that the animation and the screenplay didn't communicate properly the age of the character.
Yeah.
So you started off the movie misinterpreting the dynamic that they were trying to convey.
Exactly.
I had no trouble guessing the age of the character.
Okay.
I think a lot of it has to do with the voice acting.
Okay.
This is not the voice of a child. This is very much the voice of a 20-something-year-old that's meant to play a teenager.
Okay.
He's very, very nasally. Obviously, his balls have dropped.
I guess.
He's played by Jay Baruchel, and I actually, when you said that you didn't like the character at first, I thought you were going to bring up the voice acting because that's what bothered me at the beginning.
Oh, interesting.
I found him too nasally. Don't get me wrong, I understand what Jay Baruchel brings to the role and why they cast him, certainly as the movie progresses as well. He's a talented voice actor, but he also has that sort of very urban quality to the way he uses language, he expresses himself, which emphasizes the idea that this kid doesn't think like the other people in the village.
Okay.
And Jay Baruchel's voice does a lot to convey that in a fraction of a second. So I understand why they cast a voice of this kind. But, it's not the voice you expect from an animated feature about dragons. It's very urban, it's very peculiar, and not the sort of everyman voice that you usually look for a fairy tale hero. This is very much a movie about what it's like to be different. What it's like to be the guy who thinks outside the box.
Okay.
And, of course, every movie in Hollywood celebrates thinking outside the box, being different. This is sort of ingrained in American culture. Be yourself. Be exceptional as the person that you are, that only you can be. It's very American, and it's very ingrained in all of kids' movies. Every single one of them. Everyone's a fucking special snowflake.
Yeah.
And this one is actually presents you with a character who is a special snowflake, whereas no one else is. And what it's showing you at the beginning of the movie, at least, is going like, that sucks! That sucks! Because when you're different, it doesn't mean just that you're better at certain things than other people. It also means that you're less good at certain things than other people. It's both.
Yeah, that's true.
And the movie shows you that mercilessly. It's like, look, if you sometimes when you're different, it just sucks.
Yeah.
But it also argues that there's value in you and you should sort of hold on to that difference. And I can get behind that a little bit more than the typical special snowflake movie because it's more honest about the challenges you do face if you are different.
That's true.
There's this great scene where he befriends the dragon, and it always comes back to this for his love interest Astrid, who always asks him like, "Why'd you do that?" Like any other Viking would have just killed the fucker. Like,
Yeah.
why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? And every time he makes excuses for himself, he's always like, "Oh, no, no." Like when he talks to his father, he's so annoying with that. It's like, "Oh, well, I mean, like, if you look at it, like a animated version of Woody Allen, essentially."
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
And then near the final act, where he's gained confidence, he's gained understanding of what his experience with his dragon has brought him, he's actually capable of just saying like, "No, I did it because when I saw the dragon, I didn't think like everybody else.
Yeah.
I saw myself in him. I made a reflection that's different from your reflection, and I'm not going to apologize for it anymore." And that's that's a really empowering moment, and it's an interesting moment the way that it's written, because there's no moment in the movie where the music swells up and goes like, "I'm different and that's okay." It's more just an acknowledgement of like, "No, what I thought isn't wrong. Stop telling me that what I thought was wrong."
Yeah. Well, there's that point, however, because he learns about all different kinds of dragons, like how everything they think about dragon is completely wrong. So there is that moment where he realizes that I'm actually might be right on this, but yeah, like you said, it's not accompanied with like trumpets and fanfare. It's just like an offhand moment after he's fed like a small tiny dragon, and he's like, yeah, these are not evil creatures; they're just completely different.
And it's a realization he makes alone.
Yeah.
It's not a realization that is rewarded with everybody going like, "Oh my god, he was right." That moment does come at the end of the movie because he has to reconcile with his father, but
yeah.
He gains confidence before anyone else believes in him, and that's really important.
And he doesn't have this weird mentor that shows up and just gives him a speech before he realizes as well. Like you said, it's by himself, it's not...
This is a movie very much about seeking validation from yourself rather than others. What the movie's arguing is that once you understand your worth, other people will. Until you understand your worth, no one else will. And it's a powerful message, and one that's more important than the platitudes we get in Hollywood movies. About like, the nerd is put upon, and then everybody turns around and realizes he's a good guy, and he goes like, "Oh, I'm a good guy." It's like, you didn't need the other people to tell you you're a good guy to be a good guy.
Yeah.
And How to Train Your Dragon says that very explicitly. I love the scene where Astrid discovers his secret, and he discovers the secret of the dragons as well.
Yeah.
And he wants to keep it a secret to keep his pet dragon safe and try to figure out a way that everybody can win. And she's like, "We've been hunting this secret down forever, and you're gonna hold it back and keep it a secret just to protect your damn pet?" And his answer to that is like, yes. Nothing else, because he's reached a point in his life where he's done justifying himself to people who won't understand his way of thinking.
Yeah.
And the minute he does that, she goes like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
And it's a great lesson for kids about what confidence actually is, as opposed to seeking validation for others to fake confidence, which is sort of what we're teaching our kids to do now.
Yeah, it's like high school movies. You're always, you have to be accepted by the high school, by the clique. If not, you're never going to be the prom king or whatever. And that's basically the whole goal. The nerd becomes a prom king at the end. And it's like, that's not important, really, as long as you like yourself.
Beyond stories. Like, when you think about it, beyond stories, we give medals of participation now. It's like, "Oh, you weren't number one, but you are number one in certain ways.
Yeah.
And here's validation in a physical form for you to prove that." Or the kid could learn to look at what he's done and say, like, "Did I play well or not? Regardless of whether I won or whether or not I got a medal.
Yeah.
Did I give it my all? Did I play well? And did I still lose? Yes! That I can be proud of that." We don't teach our kids to do that anymore. And so I like that this movie's taking a very different tack that's just telling you, A, that being different is hard, which it is.
Yeah.
Being different isn't a source of validation in and of itself. Like, "Oh, you're different. Aren't I amazing?" No, you're not. Actually, you're slightly obnoxious.
Yeah, you have to do something with your difference. Something, something good with it.
Yeah, and this is the story of a kid who's different, who's learning the value of what it is that he does that's special, that can help his community. He's a guy who learns.
Yeah.
He's a guy who can empathize with others and extrapolate information from that. The montage of his training sequence to kill dragons is hilarious, where he plays with his pet and then they cut to how he applies what he learned about his pet onto other dragons to defeat them. And it's really funny.
Yeah, it is. It's funny that nobody notices what he's doing, though. It's like, oh, he's killing the dragons, I'm guessing. He's, not realizing that, no, he's actually treating them like pets and not being nasty to them like everybody expects them, to just hack them with sword and everything. He's just, no. He's being super nice and just corralling them back to the pen, and, there we go, we're done.
It's because they're single-minded.
Okay.
They only see one thing. He's the only one who can see it. And I suspect Gobber also sees it. Now, he's the second in command in the village. He's played by Craig Ferguson in a very funny performance. I like Craig Ferguson in pretty much anything, to be honest.
That's true.
And what's kind of amusing about Gobber's character is that you get the sense that he actually grew up like Hiccup. That his nature is probably closer to that of Hiccup's than that of Hiccup's father, Stoic.
Yeah.
Because we know that he understands Hiccup the way Hiccup's minds work, because he's always taking Hiccup's defense. He's always like, hey, trust him. He might blossom. There might be something there that you're missing. You need to give your son a chance. He's always saying that. When he's training, he actually gives a lot of time and patience to Hiccup, as opposed to everyone else who's like, that kid,
Yeah.
And when you listen to his training, the same way that Hiccup intellectualizes the way a dragon behaves, so does Gobber. He's like, a dragon will do this, a dragon will do that. This dragon has two heads, one that breathes fire, one that breathes gas, and one ignites the other. So the trick is this, like, he's also a person who doesn't just charge and fight the way Stoic does. He is an intellectual.
Yeah, that's true.
And he also is missing several limbs, because he's probably not as good a fighter as the others.
That's true. Yeah.
It's sort of a subtle hint that there are other people like Hiccup in the village.
And he's also the guy that runs the workshop pretty much in the village. So you know that he probably had something like Hiccup, the smarts of being able to work, stuff and build things with his hands to make, this stuff happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, he managed to use, at the end of the movie, he manages to use Hiccup's blueprints to recraft what Hiccup had done to help Toothless.
Yeah.
So clearly they're like-minded, but the movie, again, never hits you over the head with it or uses Gobber as a source of inspiration or a source of support for Hiccup. No, they leave Hiccup alone for him to figure things out on his own. But you get the sense that in the village that Hiccup is not the only person like that. It's just that the others have been swallowed by the culture.
Yeah. Yeah, like I would say, you would expect in that kind of movie him to just have the heart-to-heart at one point, I used to be like you, kid, and blah, 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 but I grew up and stuff like that. But yeah, you're right, like, that does not happen, It's completely different than from other movies. Yeah, I didn't even notice that when watching it. It was just because it was a fun story as well, so, I guess the message might have been just lost on me because I was enjoying the story, which is a good story, but just stand alone like that,
Yeah, it's a very fun adventure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of action there. There's a lot of comedy. There's a lot of romance in there. And by romance, I don't mean like love shit. I just mean like the idea of riding a dragon and fighting and, fighting for your people and all of that. That's fun stuff,
The original definition of romance,
Yeah,
hero.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about Astrid. Astrid is an interesting love interest character as well, because she doesn't behave like your typical love interest either. Her mistrust of Hiccup is very pronounced through the first half of the movie.
Yeah, at first because he doesn't take the training seriously, really, because he sucks at it. And then afterwards he's getting better and she doesn't understand why, and he's being mysterious and just running in the woods with a bunch of stuff. She's wondering what he's doing. So yeah, it's a complete relation of, I don't trust this guy, there's something wrong with him. And yeah, also, she's not, swooning for him or him for her as well. It just, it basically just happens.
Yeah.
Which is, something I like as well,
I agree. And the thing about it is, we understand from her perspective why she would be mistrustful of Hiccup, because, hey, he's obviously hiding something. He's hiding a dragon.
Yeah.
But also, he's a guy who's always apologizing for all the things he does. And that makes you think like that kid's hiding something. Why are you always apologizing even though you don't necessarily need to? You're up to something, you know?
Yeah.
And the minute he stops doing that and becomes more frank about what he wants, what he aspires to, what he needs, she's, there's that great moment where she goes like, okay, if that's what you want for the first time, you're being straightforward with me, and now I can trust you.
Yeah.
It all comes down to
Trust
that.
and maybe even respect you, you know.
So I like her a lot as well. I mean, the movie doesn't even go into like big kissing scenes and I'm gonna marry you, all of that bullshit. That, like, for all we know, they could just be really close friends afterwards. There's nothing necessarily sexual about their dynamic.
Yeah.
And you could see that friendship blossoming into something very valuable because, she respects people who are straightforward, and as he learns to be straightforward, his ability to think outside the box becomes the most valuable thing in town.
Yeah. Because at the end, when the movie's over, she like punches him for being, scaring him, and then she kisses him. And, you might think, oh well, it's sin, but since she's done that as well beforehand, you're like, okay, it's not just oh well, now she's swooning over him because he's the big hero. It's like, no, that was blossoming before everything happened. So that's I like that part as well. It just doesn't come out of the blue. Oh, you saved the village, so now
let's fuck.
I was gonna say be my husband would be more classy, but sure, let's fuck is fine. Okay.
we're a podcast called Don't Fuck With The Original, where the first line that people hear is always that quote from Scream 4, where somebody says fuck. I think I feel comfortable saying fuck on this podcast.
It's a children's movie. Maybe kids are watching. Yeah, kids are watching.
Wow, those kids are good because the camera's off. It's a podcast with sound. Alrighty then.
I'd like to talk about, basically the end a little bit.
Yeah.
Going into spoilers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end, Hiccup, and Astrid discover where the Den of the Dragons is. And they realize that all the dragons are basically almost slaves to a big giant dragon. They have to feed him, and if they don't feed him, they get eaten themselves. So that's why they have to feed him, and they attack the village to get the food.
Yeah.
And, the father decides, we need to attack the nest. I think, honestly, that was, maybe a good plan. I'm not sure why Hiccup would have been against that. If you get rid of the big dragon, then the other dragons will have attacked the village. So, I mean, it's...
Because the father goes in single-mindedly, not taking the time to listen to Hiccup as to what it is that he's facing.
Okay.
He doesn't know that he's facing a dragon that's 100,000 times bigger than anything he's ever seen before.
Yeah.
And he's not equipped to battle that.
Yeah. Well, they had catapults.
Which did nothing to hurt it.
I know. But those scenes were great, super well animated as well, because that dragon very big. You can see all the details, how it moves and everything. I thought, I was just looking at that. It's like, wow, this is how every dragon movie should have been. At the beginning, it was like really great to look at, and then having the small dragons attack him as well is like, this is spectacular animation.
I agree completely. I like that the dragons all spit a different type of fire. It's not exactly the same type of fire. Like Toothless, who's a night fury, he spits out the balls of fires that are blue.
Yeah.
And that are sort of like little mini fusion reactor explosion things in their look and sound, which makes him seem more powerful than the other flames from the other dragons.
Yeah.
And there's some that spread it out more, some that shoot a little bit more like a machine gun. Like, I like the details of all the different species of dragons actually have very different ways of functioning, and the animators are very consistent with it.
Yeah, that's true.
But I agree that final fight is super awesome. They establish somewhere in the middle of the movie what the weakness of every dragon is, and they finally exploit it. But again, it's subtle enough that it's not like, hey, remember when this cut away to the scene that you saw half an hour ago and come back? They just go with it, and either you're as smart as Hiccup and you can follow along, or you're not. Too bad for you.
I did like when the kid lands on it. I don't think it has a blind spot because it has so many eyes. He's just trying to knock the eyes out with the hammer. That was really funny.
It's also his reaction where he goes you can't miss. There are eyes everywhere.
And he finally gets what he wants, being acknowledged by the girl, you know, and he's like, oh, and that just completely messes him up, and he falls off the dragon.
What happens when you seek validation from others?
Good point. I can see that, yeah.
Small nitpick about that plot point, though, is, it took something close to, I estimate, maybe 5 months for the whole training thing to happen.
Yeah.
That's how long his father was away, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
A couple of months, at least.
At least.
And, it took all that time for Hiccup to learn how to train his dragon. And then when he needs to teach it to his fellow students to save the adults, it's like, yeah, we're going to have a crash course. It's going to take roughly half an hour, and you're all masters at it. Thank you.
Well, the thing is, though, because for Hiccup, he also had to learn how to fly with him, because the tail with his Toothless Tails was broken, so he had to learn to control with them. So that's probably why it took a little longer. So maybe, if you're on the back of a dragon, you can sort of control it better if you don't have to control the tail. So I give them a little leeway on that.
Dragons are very trusting, though, apparently, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because it took a couple of times for Hiccup to have that relationship with Toothless, whereas the others is like, there you go, done.
Well, he learned, to pat them and everything. He didn't know how to pat the dragon before. I don't know. You're right.
But whatever, like, it's I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. I think the drive of the story is strong enough that I don't actually ask myself these questions while watching it. Neither will your kid. You know what I mean? I
was fine with it. I was like, okay, no, he was nice with them during his training, so they're going to be nice with him back.
Other nitpick. I don't understand why he doesn't at least reveal to everyone, hey, you want to scare dragons? Why don't you all wear eels on your house? Put an eel on your house, put an eel on your costume, and the dragons will leave us alone, and then we don't have to go hunting for them.
Yeah. And then there's the question, how does he know that? And that might cause some trouble. How did you know that?
Yeah, but that's easy to make up, right? It's I had an eel, and then the dragon ran away from me, and I thought, wait a minute,
Can you imagine the smell of the village, though, afterwards? Eels everywhere? Oh, my God.
Maybe that's the reason.
Okay, yes.
Oh, why you didn't bring eels to face the big dragon as well? I'd be, dumping that shit all over that dragon.
I'm not sure the big dragon would have been as afraid of eels.
I'm just saying, try it. We don't know. Try it.
That's a good point. That's a lot of eels, he would have said,
But as you can see, from the level of nitpicks I'm playing with, how very well crafted this movie is.
Yeah.
That this is the best I can find to just sort of poke at it, because beyond that I can't. It's a really well constructed movie. It has a strong lesson, but it also has stronger characters and a great adventure attached to it.
Yeah.
As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I think this is one of the stronger animated movies we've had in recent years.
So, talk about the sequel a little bit?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the sequel. One of the things we have to keep in mind is that How to Train Your Dragon did lead into an animated series.
Oh, really?
Sort of a Saturday morning computer animated show.
Okay.
Which I don't watch because I'm not 6.
That does not stop us.
It stops me. I haven't watched cartoons in a very long time.
Okay.
Just because I don't have time to watch that much TV, to be
right.
honest, is what it comes down to. And if I'm going to watch TV, I'm going to watch things that are targeted at my demographic more. Mm-hmm. I still watch Avatar, so it's not 100%.
Yeah.
What the hell am I talking about? Yes, so I don't watch the show, but I can see how that concept lends itself to a good TV show, though.
Yeah, it's pretty episodic, have adventures with your dragons and, fight stuff. I could totally see that.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if you can still call it training. At one point it should just be how to ride your dragon, although that could lead to some weird interpretations.
Kids are more pure and innocent than us, so no, it wouldn't. Trailer, you basically see, again, they're having fun with dragons and they're really happy, and then they go exploring because the dragon really opens up their world. They can go exploring, and he finds a sanctuary with a lot of dragons, and somebody has been saving those dragons, and that person is his mother. That he, finally, she remembers him, and they're happy to meet. But then there's the bad guy, another Viking that also has learned to ride and control dragons, is going to attack the village because he wants to be the only one to be able to control dragons. And so I think the conflict is going to be between the village that uses dragons for good and that evil Viking guy, who basically I think enslaves the dragons and uses them for war.
Well, that mother's got a lot of splaining to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like really two separate, completely different. It's like, hey, I'm meeting your mother, and with a good ending this time, and then the Viking guy.
The thing with it, though, is I don't think they had a choice to bring an emotional component as powerful as his mother because of the TV show. When you make a movie that's a follow-up to another movie that has already spawned weekly adventures, you sort of have to find a reason to justify it not being just a 4-episode story arc on the TV show.
Yes, I see.
And I think the mother thing is something that will change the status quo, will have emotional resonance that is much deeper than any of the other episodes that you go like, no, this story is important enough to be on the big screen. I think that's a good way to justify it.
Okay.
It certainly is a more interesting way of justifying it than doing the this is the villain that is so powerful he cannot be contained on your small TV,
Yeah.
I prefer this more intimate approach to justifying an important chapter, a sequel.
But then, again, you need the big, important villain because it's a movie. It has to be epic with a storyline.
Well, yeah, because it's for kids, like, for God's sakes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the kids will totally relate to the mother thing, and, you'll see kids crying in the theater if it's well done, for sure. But at the same time, you do need to entertain them on a more basic level. So for sure, yeah, you need a big villain as well, absolutely. But if it had just been the big villain, there would always have been the question of, like, why didn't you just put it in a TV show?
Because it's in 3D.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. I'm happy. That's my point. I'm happy that the creators have found something a little bit more substantial to justify their story being important.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
And so that gives me a lot of hope for this being a decent sequel, just because clearly their approach is a little bit more thoughtful than your standard DreamWorks sequel thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I think I would love to go see it. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, it's in 3D. I get terrible motion sickness. I remember watching a blurry Wreck-It Ralph because after half an hour I couldn't stand it anymore, so I just had to take off the glasses. So I'm going to have to wait until it's out on DVD.
Well, although in all honesty, we live in an urban area, a pretty big metropolis. There's going to be a 2D version of it.
That's
you can
true.
find it.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully.
No, not hopefully. There will be in our city. Like,
yeah, you're right.
I think your point is more important to make, though, in the case of smaller cities where they do that less and less, and they just like, you're gonna watch in 3D and pay that extra $3, bitch. You have no choice.
Yeah, sadly.
And that's really sad. Like, I'm happy to live in a bigger city where they still cater to what the actual audience wants and not just what the studio tells us we want.
Yeah.
So, but, I mean, having said that, if I was going to bitch on any franchise having 3D, How to Train Your Dragon is not it.
No.
I think this 3D is justified in this case.
I know. I would totally love to watch it in 3D if I did not feel like barfing after an hour.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
What it comes down to, yeah. I don't have that problem, so I am looking forward to it.
Okay.
No, I think this could be very good. The issue of it being two unrelated storylines, that's a potential problem. That's true. And it could suffer from sequelitis to a certain degree as well.
Although they might link it as, the evil she has for Dragon Sanctuary, where she's helping Dragon, and the evil guy wants the dragons from the Sanctuary, so it might link as in a nice...
Well, no, I'm sure it will, but
Yeah.
will it link in an emotionally resonant way is sometimes the problem.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
But... you know what? This is a franchise that lends itself to further adventures. And if they're going to have a further adventure that actually means something to the characters, and not just Hiccup, but his father as well, because he's an important part of the first movie.
Yeah.
Then yeah, I'm all for it. I'm definitely going to give that a chance.
Indeed.
Until then, if you want to write us, share with us your love of dragons and Vikings and... yeah, that's pretty much it, actually. You can write us at mail@idiomatic.com or post a comment at idiomatic.com. We're also on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. We're also on iTunes. If you could write us an iTunes review, it would really help us. Otherwise, I would have no choice but to clip Nick's leg and put him in a canyon and hope that a Viking finds him and helps him out.
That'll never happen. Vikings are dead. You make no sense.
Or maybe I'm trying to get rid of you. Whoa.
That's not cool.